everybody to the 31st Annual Rock Scout Heritage Day. Okay?
I don't think you're on.
She said it was
Closer. There you go.
closer. Okay. Ronnie, you might need to be closer to the microphone. Okay. Okay, welcome again to the 31st Annual Rock Scout Heritage Day. We're glad to have you. And if you're coming from out of the area, we're especially glad to have you. And I understand it's starting to rain, or it's already been raining, so thanks for braving the weather to come out. I know you'll enjoy this program. Ronnie Fulk is going to present Fulks Run Funnies. A natural storyteller, Ronnie grew up in his father's country store, Max Superette, at Fulks Run, where he worked from the age of 9. There he heard tales from local residents. Some tales may have occurred right about the time he was working there, but some of them may have occurred through his parents' time or even his grandparents' time. Ronnie graduated from Broadway High School in 1975 and was a co-owner of M&R Feed and Hardware in Fulks Run until 1985. In 85, he began working at the United States Postal Service, becoming postmaster of Quicksburg, and in 2013, postmaster of Fulks Run. He finished his full-time working career at Central Valley Trust, retiring in 2021. Married for 43 years, just about. He and his wife, Cammie Anderson Fulk, have 2 daughters, Rebecca and Sarah. So let's make Ronnie welcome to Heritage Day.
Wow, that sounded good, didn't it? Well, I certainly want to thank Pat for the opportunity, the honor to come and speak. And I just want to tell you, my program, as she had said, is Fulks Run Funnies. And the reason I chose this program is because our community has had a rough 3.5 years. I mean, you can look, we went through gas, $4.50 a gallon or more, and bacon, $8 a pound, a dozen eggs, $7 or $8. Something we've never seen before. COVID. Look at the sickness and the lives that were lost at COVID, and also the loved ones that has passed on before their time. I mean, in the 40s, the 50 and 60-year-old range. And that's a lot of stress. Now, I tell you what my goal is here today, is to bring a smile on every face that's here at least once, and hopefully a laugh on all faces that's here. And now for the next approximately 40 minutes, that we can put these bad things out of our mind and focus on more of the lighter years of our lives and some of the stories that I've told and heard over the years. Now, when I found out it was going to be a J. Frank Hilliard, immediately I accepted, because this is never going to be J. Frank Hilliard to me. It's going to be Broadway High School. And to me, it's not just a building, it's an institution, because I really enjoyed school. You know, and the opportunity to talk in this auditorium, this is once in a lifetime, and I didn't want to turn that down. For those of you that can remember, it used to be a big barn across the road. On that barn was printed large letters, BHS, and I think the year was 65. Do you remember that? I think that might be the year they won the football championship. And all the people that I learned to know, and the friends that I made. You see, I was the only child. So in school, I had the opportunity to be with other children. But I'll have to say that in elementary school, they did not let me build on my strengths. One of the strongest talents that I had, and they suppressed me. For every report card that I would get would be a great big check mark beside of the box that says, need to refrain from excessive talking. Now look at me now. If only they could see me now. I've told you a lot of memories of BHS. And I want to tell you this, at those very doors, I was called there during study hall. Now Mr. Foley said, Ronnie, Monday morning you will start driver's education behind the wheel. Now I'll tell you, that's Christmas to a 15-year-old boy. You needed that before you could get your permit. So the first day they said, be out front and you'll have your first lesson. I go out front and there sits a Ford donated by the Ford Motor Company. And in the car was not Mr. Foley, but Miss Boulder. That's the girls' tennis coach. What's she doing in there? I wanted Mr. Foley. So I get in the car and I start out to 259. The first thing she says, make a left. We're going to be driving in some rural areas today. I said, okay. So I make my left. And on the way back, I have to be honest, back 259, and here's this lady sitting beside of me in a short skirt. And I'm thinking, is this a part of distracted driving or something? You know, that I'm a 15-year-old boy. You go through that there gigantic experience, the terrible experience, called that three-letter word, puberty. Well, not three letters, but should be, the way it affects you. But anyway, I keep it going, keep my eyes on the road, and we get to a place, she says, make a left. And I make the left. And right there goes Fulks Run Grocery, turn her hands. Now, I could have told her then, when she said make a right, that we'd just traveled 1.6 of a mile, lived in Fulks Run. Said make a right. Here we go. And up here is Mountain Grove Church. Couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer. So I say, I go to church right here. You go to church here? I said, yeah. And here's where I probably should have kept my mouth shut. I said, you know how many people that are dead in this cemetery right here? She said, no, how many? I said, every one of them. Said, just keep it going. So I keep it going, and the next thing I said, I live right here. This is my house. Said, make a right here. We're going back to the school. I don't know, but next day, Mr. Foley was my driver's ed. You remember the cafeteria hall monitors. They would sit right down this hall, and when you was at lunch, they wouldn't let you come past. You had to stay in the lunch area cafeteria. So now I ate lunch with some, of course the teachers had their lunch break. It was Mr. Kidd, Mrs. Kidd, and John Radosevich. So as they sat there and guarded and made sure nobody come by, I'd watch till they was going back to the room, and I'd follow in beside them. And I'd say, how are you all today? They said, well, pretty good. And when I got by the hall monitor, I'd head to the library. Mrs. Campbell, one of the nicest ladies you ever want to meet, and I'd read scrapbooks. And they had in there about sports. I can remember Ronnie Fulk and Jerry Grandel. I mean, they were powerful basketball players. And you could read their scoring. I think Jerry Grandel was over 30 points a game, had an average or something like that. But then one day, as I was walking by with them, Mr. Radosevich, about 3 or 4 weeks later, said, Fulk, where are you supposed to be? I said, well, this is my lunch. Well, why aren't you in your lunch? I said, I'm reading in the library. Well, you need a hall pass, so you get a hall pass. I said, well, I'll try to do that, but I never did. You know, a bus driver told me one time about a small pre-K student, true story, first day of school, that evening, they were letting a child off the bus. This is back in the Burton area. Said, I'll see you in the morning. This little pre-K said, you won't see me. You don't need to stop for me in the morning. I don't go for this stuff. They didn't say stuff, I'll tell you that. And then you learn things in school about how hard people have to work. Now, there was a middle school, and the children were just starting, the young ladies, to wear lipstick. So they put the lipstick on, and they go up to the mirror in the kiss it. There's their big lip prints with the lipstick. This custodian cleaned it off. Next day, same thing. So the principal says, well, what these children need to know is how hard a job that is to keep these mirrors clean. So she called all the girls into the girls' bathroom. So now, children, someone has been kissing, several of you kissing these mirrors with your lipstick on. So what we're going to do is show you just how hard a work it is to keep these clean. So she went and got one of them squeakies, like you wash your windshield. She went over and she dipped it in the commode, swatched it around a little bit. Then she come over and she washed that mirror off and then squeezed it dry. Said, you see how hard a work that is? And it was never any problem after that. Now that's what you call a pretty smart principal. All you have to do is explain how hard a work that was. You know, the joke one time, a fella said times were really hard and money was really tight when he was in school. So he went to school and that day he had a broken arm. The teacher said, how did you break your arm? What's wrong? What is it? I broke my arm. Well, how did you do it? He said, I broke my arm eating breakfast. How did you break your arm eating breakfast? He said, I fell out of the persimmon tree. Now that's hard times, isn't it, when you need to eat persimmons for breakfast. I had a time in school, really did. You remember leaf collections? I don't know if they still do them or not, but I had to do a leaf collection. So I went home and I told my mother, I said, Mother, I need to go to Harrisonburg. She said, what do you got to go to Harrisonburg for? I said, I got a science project, or biology, whatever it was. She said, oh, okay. Now, you know, for those of you familiar with Harrisonburg, as you go out almost to the Sharp Shopper, well, before you get to the Sharp Shopper, in that day, it used to be a business there called Hudson Garden Center. Man, I just jumped out of the car, got my notebook, and started picking leaves, and right there it was. Proper name, official name, leaf collection. I get back to school and I'm proud of my leaf collection. I turned in and said, we didn't realize it was these kind of leaves in this area. I said, that's all said. Oh, back in Fulks Run, we got a lot of trees. And if you don't believe it, drive back. You can look. It's a lot of trees in Fulks Run. Things change in school. I used to bring my shotgun with me to school. I'd leave it in the car, of course. But then on my way home, I could go straight to the woods. And me and my old timer buddy, I would park at the road and walk up the hollow, and he would park halfway up the hollow and go on up the hollow hunting. When I got to his vehicle, I'd go up and pick him up, and then we'd come back out. So you see, I don't think that would float right now to bring a shotgun to school. But one time, he'd always tell me this, kill all you can kill. Well, now the limit's only 6. Don't matter, kill all you can kill. Well, I never had much problem with going over my limit. But one day, I was very fortunate. I did kill 6 squirrels. I met up with him, and here he come with 7. We're 1 over the limit. I said, uh-oh. I said, we're in trouble. Oh, no, no problem. I said, what if a game warden stops us? He said, no problem. He said, I've done this before. I done this one time for the turkey out of season. I said, what do? Do you remember them vehicles that had the spare tire on the back? On that spare tire was a cover. He just loosened the cover and stuck that 13th squirrel under the cover and tied it shut. Fulks Run would come. He was right, no problem. He was experienced. I somehow began writing articles for the Chimney Rock Chronicle. You know, one day I opened the pages and I seen Ronnie Fulk, staff writer. I said, Cameron, that's nothing like a staph infection, is it? No, you're fine, she said. And as we was talking about squirrel hunting, the first story I wrote was about a man. And they walked up to him and they said, how many squirrels you killed this year? You got any? Yeah, I killed some. I said, well, how many did you kill? He said, they're behind the house on one tree. I killed 99. 99 squirrels on one tree? Yeah. Well, why did you just say 100? He said, well, who in the world tell a lie for 1 squirrel? Now, you got to admire that, an honest man. You know, that was nice. You know, Fulks Run was famous for deer hunting. If you get up on a high ridge on the first day of deer season, before daylight, 259 and Little Dry River looked like 81. Just car after car after car. And after the season was over, this old timer, he'd ride through the mountains and stop at campsites. And he would search these campsites and he'd find knives and hatchets and shells and all kinds of things. And that was one thing he did, was look for these things. Well, the store Mike Superette was sold a hunting license. And this is where a lot of my stories came from. And I want to tell you this about a man. He come in and he had, we know about Benny's Beach, Benny's. And it was getting late in the evening and night, and he decided he was going down for some refreshments. When he got there, it was two men bringing a third man out. And he was propped over both the other men, and they was somewhat bringing him to the car and trying to stuff him in the car under the steering wheel. The fellow walked up, he said, "What y'all doing?" I said, "Well, he wants to go home." Well, okay, but he looks pretty drunk, really drunk. Said, "Do you think it would be okay for him to drive?" Said, "He'll have to drive." Said, "What do you mean?" Said, "He's way too drunk to walk." Now, that sort of proves that alcohol kills brain cells. And also that proves that was before the designated driver. Another story, they used to come into the store and sit. They had these big windows, and it was a little overhang, and they'd sit in these windows. And if you read the Chronicle a year or so ago, I think I told this story, and we'll call him Bill. And Bill come in, and he was scratched up on his arms and his face, scratched. He was in the rose bushes hunting, and he got these scratches. Somebody said to him, "Bill, what in the world happened to you?" He said, "I've had a day. I mean a powerful day." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I was up at my favorite spot hunting." And he said, "The next thing you know, I hear this noise, and here comes one of the biggest bucks you ever seen in your life. I leveled in on him. Dropped like a beef. Got my big buck." He said, "I go down there," and he said, "I grab him by the horn with my knife, and I go to cut his throat, and the next thing, that thing jumps up with me. I drop my knife to grab the horns, and down through the ridge we go. This deer and me are riding him, holding on to his horn." He said, "Then about 300 yards down through the woods, I hear pow, 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 pow." And I'll hit at this. And some idiot shot that deer out from under me. Throwed me for 30 or 40 feet down through the rocks and the bushes, and he said, "Look here, I'm scratched up." "Oh, Bill, that's awful." He said, "I'm here watching for that deer. I'd recognize it, and I'm going to get that man." He said, "I could have been killed." About that time, fellow, we'll call him Ralph. "Yes, I know exactly what you went through. I had traumatic experience myself, turkey hunting. Chickens went away that night, and I was up all night, and I didn't have time to go to bed. So I said, I put my camouflage on, and he said, I eat my breakfast, and I went up to my favorite gobbler hunting. Kill a turkey gobbler. Said, I sat up there, and I got in the sun, I made a couple calls, and one answered. Made a couple more calls, and he said, there I sat in that sun, full belly, warm, and I fell asleep. The next thing I woke up, and right when I opened my eyes, there stood the biggest turkey gobbler I ever seen in my life, right beside of me. I couldn't grab my gun. I didn't know what to do. So I grabbed him by his feet. And this turkey started a-flopping and a-flopping and a-fighting, and up through the pine trees we started, me holding on to this turkey. And he said when we got up to the top of the pines, I could see he was heading for a deep holler. Well, I couldn't hold on that long. And if I got on that deep holler, the fall would kill me. So I let go, and down through the pine trees I went. He said, I thought I broke a leg, but praise the Lord, I was all right. Bill jumped up, and he stood there looking at him. And I'll edit this. He said, that's a bald-faced lie. Now the door went. See, not everybody's honest like the guy killed 99 squirrels. Yeah. You know, there was a big turkey in this April edition. Did you read that? Chimney Rock? A man seen this turkey along the road, and he got a glimpse of it, so he decided, that's the biggest turkey he's ever seen. And an erratic movement, this turkey. He couldn't understand it. It just didn't look natural, but it went over the side of the ridge, and he had to go to work, so he couldn't chase it. But it bothered him so much, a couple days later, he went back. And when he got there, he found himself a spot secluded where he could watch. And he sat there for over an hour, and he heard something coming. And he looked, and here was a turkey. And his turkey was coming up through the woods. But he suddenly realized what that erratic movement was that was so strange. That turkey was so big and had a beard so long, that turkey had to walk backwards to keep from walking on his beard and tripping. You see, now that's probably one for the record books. That was told to me at the Turkey Festival in Matthias, matter of fact. Delicious meal. Go if you can in October. Now, this story I heard with my own ears about 9 or 10 years old. Did you know it was a monster on Ronnie's Creek? Yep. My daddy was there at the store, and these two individuals came in, and they were out of towners, maybe out of state, and they said, Mr. Fulk, we want to know where Ronnie's Creek is. We go down here to Chimney Rock. You can't miss it. Make a left and go back to Ronnie's Creek, about 8 miles or 9 miles in National Forest. They said this is a good place to hunt deer. Well, it's a lot of game back in that area. Well, they said, we'll probably go back there and set up our camp and hunt. Well, about that time, a man walked up to my dad and he said, Matthew, he said, I just want to tell you, if you go on Ronnie's Creek, be sure and take a gun. Why? It's a monster on Ronnie's Creek. A monster on Ronnie's Creek? Yeah. Said that thing's 8 foot tall at least. When he takes a step, 1 foot is on this side of the road, the next step's in the middle of the road, and the next step's on the other side of the road. That thing is so big, he's caught about every deer back there on Ronnie's Creek. He's now getting in people's gardens this summer, eat their corn up, their tomatoes, have tore their gardens up, and now he's grabbing their butchering hogs under one arm and heading towards the mountains. But I said, I've never heard of that. Never heard of it. Well, that's what it is. So I don't know, but when the man got done talking, I went up to my daddy. I said, Daddy, do you think that monster will come to Fulks Run? I'll never forget, he stopped, turned around, and did like this. So let me tell you something right now. Don't you worry anymore about that monster coming to Fulks Run. He's not going to be here. Now get that out of your head right now. Well, I have to admit, I did feel much better because what my daddy told me, you could take that to the bank. But it was still a little uncertain how he could be so sure. And then later, as I got older, I understood more fully. That thing was sighted out in the West Coast. So you see, he moved out that way, and my daddy probably knows that that's where he'd be going, for bigger mountains. Yeah. So he was exactly right. That thing never did make it to Fulks Run. You know, there was a need for you to know that deer meat fed a lot of people for many years in Fulks Run. And in the 60s, a young man would go out and he'd spot deer, and they Friday night for about 10 or 12 weeks. And that fed their family. He said there was not anything left by the next Friday. That family was large enough, they'd eat a whole deer in a week. But this story comes from in the 70s. They were having a party in Genoa. And they were thirsty at this party. And suddenly a fella pulls up in a car and he says, let's go kill a deer. Well, 5 people jumps in with him. 5 young people. One grabbed his gun and up Dry River they go. They get up Dry River. Now this is the way it normally would work. They go up Dry River, and up there used to be a sign that said now entering National Forest, or George Washington National Forest. They'd hide their gun there. Then they go up spotting up Dry River, and when they see a field full of deer, they shut the light off, turn around, come back down, get the gun, take it up, come to the field, be ready. They flip the light on, pow! two boys would jump out and the car would take off. The car would go up the road, pop the trunk, the boot, come back down. By that time, the two boys had the deer, throw the boot, shut the boot, on they go. That's pretty neat. Planned out, wasn't it? Well, then they'd clean the deer up and eat it. Clean it up and eat it that very night. Well, this time, this didn't work quite that way. As they were going up Dry River, and this man was driving and his 5 buddies with him, they looked in the rearview mirror and here comes a car behind them at a distance. Game warden! Game warden? Yes, and he tramps on him. Up Dry River they go, and he said, one says, it don't matter. Spotlighting's legal now. We can spot. You don't have to speed. He said, if they catch me, I'll never get my driver's license. You don't have your driver's license? No. He said, I got to get away. So he said, okay. Get up here a little bit, hit the brakes and stop. We'll do a Chinese fire drill. You know what that is? Everybody jumps out and runs around the car, and he said, I'll end up under the driver's seat. No problem. By that time, they're to the foot of the mountain. The right wheel is in the ditch. He says, stop, slow down. He said, I'm holding the brake. It wasn't the brake he was holding. It was the accelerator. They got in that ditch and it was going on pretty well until there was a culvert. And they hit that culvert, and when they did, that car, like a rocket ship. They said all they could remember is just like they was in a spaceship and there was the top of the trees and the headlights. And then it started to flip, crash over the side of the mountain. 6 young men. Now, how many would have been hurt? I think it's not guardian angels. None. All 6 run up to the top. They're beside the road and they're sitting there looking down there in the car upside down, the headlights shining down through the woods, and here comes the car that was behind them. They pull up. No game warden. It was some of their party goers that were up in Genoa. So the one guy gets out and said, what you all doing here? He said, we wrecked. We run over the side of the mountain. And the boy walks up. He said, whose car is it? They said, yours? Mine. It ain't mine. Mine's over at the party. No, it's not. That's your car. He said, I can't go home. My daddy'll kill me. I think it was 4 or 5 days before the boy went home. He was innocent. But nobody was hurt. Now, you know, sometimes people will say, Ronnie, is that really true? Now, what do you think? Could that be really true? Now, I'm going to ask you this, participation. How many thinks that's a true story? Raise your hand. Well, I got a few believers. Now, who thinks it's not? Raise your hand. Yeah, just believers. I want to thank these 2 gentlemen for coming, because these are 2 of the 6 that was in the car that night. Would you please stand, young men? Praise the Lord for guardian angels. Now, if you have any questions, now let me ask you this: was I pretty accurate in telling that?
Yes, Lord.
Okay, that's all you need to know. That was been in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Now, sadly, I will have to say this: one of the boys that was in, I don't know where he lives, but 3 of the others died way too young. One with heart trouble with 56. And the other 2 with cancer in their 60s. And that cancer is a bad thing, and we hear so much about it. But I appreciate Dave and Doug coming and verifying that. I thought that'd be a lot of fun to verify my story. Now, the stories you would hear at the church, or at the store, well, at church too, but at the store. There was one time I heard my daddy come back and he was sort of laughing. And I said, what's wrong? He said, I just seen a fella I hadn't seen for a couple of weeks. And I asked him, I said, I haven't seen you, where you been? He said, well, he said, I want to let you know I got married. Well, congratulations. He said, you'll have to bring her in, then I can meet her. Well, he said, maybe I'll do that. But he said, I want to tell you this right up front. He said, Matthew, I married an ugly woman. What? Oh, now, I don't believe that. Yes, I did. And I intentionally did that. He said, I'm away a lot. And he said, I didn't want to have to worry while I was away that somebody was my woman. You got to think outside the box, I guess. But anyway, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Remember that. So, what the stories I have shared with you here today is in the past. That's happened. We cannot wind back time. We cannot change that no matter how hard we try. But we have a gift here today. And that gift is that we are in the present. We are here now. And what makes this so wonderful is we have an opportunity to change the future. And hopefully for the better. Now I encourage you to listen to these stories that are told. Share the stories, you older people. Share the stories and tell the people of some of the experiences that you've had. Now I know that we're too busy. We're always in a hurry. We got somewhere else to be. And time seems to be short. But please take time to share these stories with others, especially young people. They might not act like they're paying any attention, but sometimes they may. You know, I can't count the number of times that I would think after my daddy passed, if only I would have asked my daddy about that. If only I'd have done that. But now it's too late. It's a gospel song, and the first beginning lyric strikes home to my heart. It says, if I had only known the last time would be the last time. Isn't that a powerful line? If I would have only known the last time would have been the last time. I would have put off all the things I had to do. I would have stayed a little longer, held a little tighter. Now what I'd give for one more day with you. And I imagine it's people in this audience that can relate to that. Now, just recently, I stopped at a man's house, and he told me how much he enjoyed the Chronicle and reading the stories. And he told me this story, and this has moved to one of my favorites list. He said it was a fellow, and his name was Oliver Scudders, lived in Fulks Run. And to give you the time period of this, Oliver was born in 1888, February the 25th. I looked it up. And they decided they were going grouse hunting on up Dry River. So they started, him and his two buddies, to go up Dry River to go grouse hunting. And a terrible snowstorm came in. And it started to snow and snow and snow until they got to this man's cabin they were going to borrow. Stay at his cabin, get up the next morning and hunt grouse. It was significant snow. Well, Oliver had just bought a pretty much a new pair of leather boots. And his feet were soaking wet. So they lit up this big stove and throwed in some red oak, you know how that works. And he put them boots beside that stove to dry off. Well, the next morning when they got up, it had continued to snow, and it was way too much snow to hunt grouse. So they said, well, boys, we just will go home. It ain't no use to stay here. So when Oliver went over to the stove to get his boots, either someone made the fire too hot, or he put the boots a little too close, because that leather had shrunk up about 2 or 3 sizes, and he couldn't even get his feet in them. Now here he is. Yes, he's a World War I veteran, but you don't want to walk that many miles barefooted in the snow. So they said, what are we going to do? He said, I can't go barefooted. So they looked all around and they finally found some burlap sacks. You know what burlap sacks are. So they put his feet in there and they balled these burlap sacks up and tied them tight around his ankles. And old Oliver was going to wear burlap shoes. So off Dry River they come and they made it safe. They made it home safe. Well, I don't know, maybe an hour or so later, a man come into the store. He said, how are you? Oh, pretty good. He said, where have you been? I'll come off Dry River. But he said, I want to tell you something right now. He said, what's that? He said, I've seen something I've never seen before in my life. Well, what's that? He said, coming off Dry River, he said, I tracked two men coming off Dry River. And he said, when they were tracking the biggest bear track I'd ever seen in my life. It wasn't a bear track, it was Oliver Scudder in his burlap boots. Now that is a human nature story that is so funny. I love them. Thank you. Because that brings a smile and a laugh to your face. And that man was serious. He thought he was seeing the biggest bear track he ever seen in his life. You know, just one more story, and this is a joke. But I think it's a cute joke. I don't know, my time's up. How long have I talked, Kevin? I don't want to take other people's time and need you to share over there. But two little boys, and they were sitting on the steps of a pretty nice house. To give you the time frame, this was during Prohibition. So as they sat there, a young man came up and knocked on the door. A lady came to the door and said, yes, sir, can I help you? Said, I'd like $10 worth, please. Come in, come in. They were selling moonshine. That was their code. $10 worth, please. They take them in, down the hall, back to the kitchen, give them their moonshine, out the back door, out the porch, down the steps, down the alley, and away they went. The little boy looked at one another. You know how young kids are. The next fella, $10 worth, please. Come in, come in. Same thing. Well, when the third man came up, $10 worth, please. Come in, sir, come in. One little boy says, how much money you got? I think I got a nickel. Said, I got 5 pennies, come on. They walked up to that door, stood as tall as they could. Lady come, young men, how can I help you? Said, we would like to have 10 cents worth, please. Well, come in, come in. And two young fellas, when they got in the hall, she grabbed them both by the back of the neck. She was going to break them from being nosy. She started down the hall and she started stacking their heads together. Every other step she'd kick one in the butt and then the other in the butt. She got to the kitchen and back through, out on the porch she went. And one last good crack and one last good kick and down over the steps and into the yard these two boys rolled. The one jumped up and he stood there looking down at the other one. Finally he said, thank God, thank God, thank God. We didn't have $10. I guess they thought that was 10 cents worth. They sure didn't want $10. But isn't that like little boys? And isn't that a good one? I thought that was a cute story. Now, I also am thankful. And not that I don't have $10, of course, but for people that are here helping other people and working hard in the community. And one of those is Pat Turner Ritchie. The amount of time that she puts into these cemeteries and building and fixing stones and even replacing stones, I want to thank her for that. And in this building someplace, there's a jar that has donations for cemetery upkeep. And I can all but guarantee that if you put in a few dollars, that will certainly help. It'd be appreciated, and some of your family would be in those cemeteries that are fixed and made to look nice. So if you would please consider that you would do that. Just a few dollars will help enough. And then, as you read the Chimney Rock Chronicle, believe it or not, until next time, Ronnie. Thank you.